Welcome to the farm. Hello everybody, and welcome back to CNS Farms. It's our second video that we're going to put out there for y'all today. We're going to take you on a tour of the farm and the surrounding fields that we got here around the farm. So y'all just come on and join us. Hope you enjoy. So here we are just outside the shop at the farm. This is kind of our center of operations here, where we keep all of our equipment at and work on repairs. You can see everything there. Down the driveway there is the grain center. We'll go down there here in just a little bit and show y'all down there and what we've got going on around there. Everything's a little bit cluttered and messy right now. It's the end of the season and we're just getting everything cleaned up, ready to go for winter time. And so y'all stick with us.
Okay, good morning everybody. Jamie wanted us to do a farm tour to show you the area we farm up on the brushes. This is the shop area, and it also has our high-tech grain center in it. And Josh will be doing a grain center tour with Jamie later today. It's a very sophisticated system. You can change things, you can make it do anything you want to. The field we're coming up on the left we call home left. It's a 10-acre field. Part of it's in timber, and we have been using it for grain, corn or soybeans, and we've got it planted in rye. The field to the right of us we call home right. This is about 25 acres, and as you can see, the rye we planted is already coming up. Those little sprigs of green are this very unique variety of rye that we grow for our distillery partners in the area. We work with multiple distilleries. One distillery wants us to grow 1.1 million pounds for the coming year, and we're partnering with a farmer in the eastern part of the state to do that. He has the acreage to do it, because this variety of rye puts out 65 bushels per acre, whereas most variety of rye put out only 40. But once again, it's very unique. It's not a hybrid. It's very old rye, and it is so healthy, beautiful. I have some still pictures of it. I took a picture when the wind was blowing through it. It was amazing to watch the rye move like the ocean. This continues home left. It comes up on this knoll. Funny thing about farming in the brushes. My old seed and chemical guy came up here one day. He was the first seed and chem guy that I had, and he wanted me to take him a tour of the fields. And when we got over here to this field, we were in my side-by-side. I started up the hill, which it is steep. He started grabbing for handles and anything he could hang on to, and I said, "What is the matter with you?" He said, "You're absolutely crazy." He said, "How do you plant these fields?" I said, "With a tractor and a planter." And he said, "I've never seen anything like that. That's probably a 28 to 30% grade over that knoll." But he was scared to death. And funny thing, he never asked me to ride. He never asked to ride with me again. So, you know, that's a flatlander coming to the mountains and getting scared to death. This is more of home right. We have the best prepared fields now we have ever had. We've tried multiple tillage tools. We tried a John Deere mulch finisher. I wasn't really crazy about that. We tried a turbo till, which did a good job. And this year, working with Corey Elder at James River, we found a Salford. Now, if you watch the guys in the Midwest, upper Midwest, the Larson Farms guys and a Millennial Farmer, all they talk about Salford. and I had never seen a Salford unit. And I called Corey and told him I had to have a good tillage tool, and they had a Salford tillage tool at their Monroe location. So they brought it up here and we tried it, and our fields have never been prepared this well before. It looks like carpet. It's so smooth. Got rid of all the humps, helped us with putting the matter from the corn stalks back into the ground. We're all about promoting soil health. And this tillage tool isn't like a deep tillage tool. It just prepares about the first 4 inches. And whatever we grow, whether it's soybeans or rye or corn, we always plow the material left over from the harvest back into the soil because it makes it loose. It helps it hold water, and it keeps pests from coming in, and you don't have the problem with the diseases. But we really strive to promote our soil health here. We use a lot of poultry litter because poultry litter not only gives the nutrients to the soil, but it provides, once again, that mass, biomass, if you want to call it that. We do not farm this field. This is a neighbor's field, and another gentleman that lives on the mountain cuts half of it. The fields we're coming up on we call Lower and Upper Donna, because my wonderful neighbor Donna Hagler owns the property, and I talked to her about putting crops in it 4 or 5 years ago, and she agreed. And it's a very rolling hill. Once again, you got a lot of grade in it. Sometimes it gets a little wonky if your combine is full, but it grows great crops. And you can see, looking at the dirt, just how black and rich it is. I mean, this soil on this mountain is phenomenal. Max said something in the first video that we put out about me naming fields. I name everything, whether it's a truck or a particular tool that we use. Throughout my life, I've named things. I call Jamie Jame. I call another fella Jim. And Mac is Mackie Doodle. And Aaron he is our singer of songs, teller of tales, and the president of the division that fixes stuff for us. Because with all this equipment and multiple people using equipment, you can have a lot of equipment repair costs. But I give each field a name based on the either things that we've done with it, or problems that we've had with it, or who the owner is. The next field we're going to go to is one of the biggest fields we have. It's a 35-acre field. You saw Mac planting rye in it, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I named it Pig Field. And people think, well, it's because it had pigs on it one time. No. The first year I farmed up here, I grew 91 acres of pumpkins, all of it by myself, with with the exception of having some contract laborers coming in and helping with the harvest. But this field, I spent a ton of money with the company for the burn down process to get rid of weeds. We did a straight burn down, and then we did a pre-emergent. I planted the pumpkins in it. And within a couple weeks, I noticed some plants coming up. And they certainly weren't pumpkin plants, but they were intermingled with the pumpkin plants. And I watched them, and I called this gentleman whose company provided the burn down service. I mean, they brought in big sprayers, tanks of herbicides and things like that. And I said, I've got a weed growing. Well, your pre-emergent hadn't kicked in yet. It'll get them. Well, I kept watching them, and the plants were exploding. And I finally called him one day, and I said, you need to come up here and see what's growing in this field. And he came up here, he said, you have a red root pigweed infestation. In fact, it's the worst infestation I've ever seen. And I said, well, what do I do? I said, I spent all this money on, with you on the burn down. We planted our pumpkin crop in it. I said, it's going to really be a problem. And he said, there's nothing you can do for it. And I said, well, what I need to do in the future? He said, grow corn. Well, we hadn't started farming corn yet, but I fought the weeds for 5 years now, and we pretty much got it under control. But that particular year, the pigweeds outproduced the pumpkins, and therefore this field is called the pigweed field. It has been, it's had cattle ran on it, but for the last 5 years, a family has leased this and 2 other fields that are close to it, and they did nothing with it. So the weeds overtook the field. There was pigweed plants in this field that were higher than the hood of a tractor, and that's just crazy. So we fought it really, really hard. I feel good about where we are with our weed control, but you know, I've dumped a lot of money into this field to get this point. And once again, you can see the surface of the soil. It's just level. It's beautiful. Our cornstalk matter has been worked into the soil, and it's going to be a wonderful, healthy field for our rye, which has been planted. It's not up yet, but it won't be long. And we'll probably put corn back in this field this year, or we may put soybeans in it. But we had such good luck with our DeKalb corn seed variant. We had huge yield off these fields. The average for all fields together was 245 bushels an acre, and one field was up around 300, and which is, you know, there's a lot of people that are happy with 140 to 170 acres per yield per acre. But when I was working with our chemical and seed guy, I told him, he asked me, he said, what do you want to yield out of this field? I said, I want to yield 235 acres per bushel in all these fields. And he looked at me and said, what'd you get last year out of your test field? And I said, around 200. So we built these fields to produce 235 bushels per acre. And when I pulled the soil samples and had the analysis done, he came up and reviewed each field with me. And he said, this is the best prepared cornfields I have ever seen. And we get our litter from Caleb and Tony Johnson. And Caleb says it's supercharged poultry litter, and it must be true because it sure did yield a huge crop. And we'll just drive around the perimeter of the field because, you know, part of it is higher than the road. You can't grasp the kind of rolls and elevation changes that we get up here on the mountain. Anything else will help tamp the seed down the soil. This field is the money field. I call it the money field because it has consistently been the best producing field for 5 years. It was the best producing field for pumpkins. It was the best producing field for rye. Best producing field for soybeans. Best producing field for corn. I leased this field and the pig field from a gentleman who's an old family friend. And once again, this field it laid fallow for 5 years, and we had a problem with pigweed in this field too, but it wasn't as bad as the pig field. But you can see it's a beautiful field. It backs up to my cabin and the shop. You got a lot of it's now a really good field to farm. We pretty much got the humps and lumps and stuff out of it to get back on the road. But you can see it's just beautiful. Look at that. It's just fantastically prepared. And after using this Salford for a couple of years, it'll be absolutely fantastic. And you can see the field runs all the way around. It has a tree island in the middle. It's just a great piece of property. This field to the left of the money field we call the blood field. I call it the blood field because the gentleman that owns its last name is Blood. And we've had a lot of challenges with this field as well, because the same family that had Pig Field and Money Field leased also had this field leased. And the weeds were just absolutely out of control. We've worked out, my spray bill last year was like $60-some thousand, and this year is going to be that much at least. That's including all the chemicals we use, whether it's herbicides or micronutrients, whatever it is. But you can see it's really prepared beautifully. The Salfer did its job here. One of the problems with every piece of property on this mountain that we farm has been rocks. We have spent thousands of hours with rock rakes, rock pickers, and rock buckets on skid steers getting the rocks up. And if you can look around almost every corner of any field and see huge piles of rocks. Oh, it's funny that when we first got a rock bucket for the skid steer, Mac was going over to Pig Field and getting rocks out. He called me and said, well, and I told him, I said, you just go along the surface and pick the rocks up and let the dirt out. The rock rake or the rock bucket has fingers in it on the bottom, so the dirt falls through, and all you have in the bucket then is rocks. He called me, he said, well, I've done more than you told me to do, but you need to come here and see it. And he had accumulated mountains and mountains and mountains of rocks that were on the surface of the field, might look this big, but when you hit them, it was much deeper. So we backfilled those holes and used them in some low places, the rocks in some low places, then added more topsoil to it to help level the field out. But the rocks have really been a challenge. When we get over to hillside, which had the corn cut on it, and part of it has been planted in rye, but the extreme grade has not, because it's a challenge to plant. But there are just rocks everywhere. That's been, I threatened to change the name of hillside to Rock Hill, because there's just so many rocks in the field. And you can see our rise coming up here. And this is a great field. And the gentleman has been wanting to sell it, and I put him and my millwright Mike Silver together, and Mike's buying the field from him, and I'll continue to farm it, because it is a good field to farm. We've got irrigation lines laying out here from where we grew pumpkins this year, because we have to irrigate our pumpkins. They require water mostly every day. As you can see, it is a beautiful field. Now beyond that corner over there, it just really takes a dive, and you have to be very careful or you get yourself in trouble on a piece of farmland. But it is beautiful. You can see the Salford has done its job. I mean, in 1 year of using this Salford, you can look at each field, and it really did a great job leveling the field up, putting the residue back in the soil, that biomass that we try to get. That's an amazing piece of equipment.
We're going to drive over to hillside now, so we'll take a little break and bring you back whenever we get over there to that field.